This is one of those videos that I have not been looking forward to making, simply because it was really hard to try to condense all this information in kind of like a 3 to 5 minute format, which is what we're trying to achieve here. We're talking about, obviously, wine, red wine in particular. Wine is very complicated because so many things affect its taste, from the person who made it, the label, the production facility, where it was aged, what barrels was used, what woods were used, what grapes were used, where were the grapes planted, what was the weather like on the year the grapes were harvested. There's just so many different factors, little factors that end up affecting the overall flavor of a particular wine. Usually what you'll find on a menu is the brand, then you'll find the grape variety, or if it's a blend, it'll tell you the different grape varieties that are in there. Then you'll have the region and the country and the year. These are all indications of the quality of a wine, if only you know how a particular year was in a particular region, in a particular country, for a particular wine variety. It's a lot of knowledge to keep around, and it's very hard. So what I usually try to do, especially if you're just starting out, is try to gain knowledge in terms of the grape varieties and what flavors they usually produce, so that at least you know more or less what styles of wines that they produce, and you know how to order it in a restaurant and what you prefer to drink. All wines, well, most wines are made from grapes, and the grapes that are used in the manufacturing of wine are very different from the grapes that you'll find here. They're usually kind of like thicker skinned, they have seeds obviously, they're much sweeter, and those are the ones that are used for wine production. Then they go through very different, various processes to eventually become the wine that you're drinking at various ABVs and alcohol levels as well. There are about 1,300 grape varieties in the world. Yes, that many. But only about 100 of them actually amount to 75% of the wine production worldwide. So the 100 grape varieties, we're not gonna go through them today, but those are kind of like the most important ones. So today I wanted to kind of go over the ones that you'll mostly hear or see locally, or when you go around Landers, you'll see that in the label most frequently. When talking about wines, you'll hear the word tannins a lot. Tannins are naturally occurring in a lot of different things like vegetables, leaves, woods, barks, and they usually bring kind of like an astringency and bitterness to an overall flavor profile of a certain product, which is why you hear it frequently in wine tasting, because the tannins that you taste in a wine usually come from the skin, the pectin, or the stems of that grape. Other high tannic foods that you might be able to think about are things like tea leaves, cinnamon, so think of those flavors each time you're drinking a wine. Pinot Noir is a great light red wine, probably the lightest red wine you'll find out there. It's usually planted popular in regions like the northeastern Alsace region of France. New Zealand, Australia all have lots of Pinot Noir as well. It's quite light. It will help you understand the acidity that wine can have. And it's quite fruity as well, which is why it's great to kind of drink on a summer day when you don't want to feel too heavy. A Grenache is another popular variety that's medium-bodied. It's quite fruity. It has some nice spiciness to it that might remind you of kind of like a Shiraz. Grenache is popular in France, but you can also find it nowadays all over the world. It's a great kind of like red fruit-forward flavor, which is quite interesting, and it's quite meaty and savory, if that makes any sense. But when you drink it and you taste it, you'll know exactly what I mean. Merlot is another crowd favorite. I don't know if it's because people just like the way it sounds. Merlot. It sounds classy almost. You hear it in a lot of American movies. People are drinking Merlot and they say Merlot. And it's popular because it can either be light or bold, depending on where it's made or where it's from. But it usually is quite smooth and quite fruity, which is why it's something that's easy to serve in like parties and stuff, because a lot of larger groups of people who may or may not know wine will appreciate a good quality Merlot. A Tempranillo is if you're looking for a Spanish wine or to try something different. Tempranillo is very popular in Spain. I'm not sure if it's grown anywhere else in the world, but I know it's definitely in Spain. This is a kind of wine that is actually quite earthy. So when you think of earthy flavors, think of things that remind you of the earth. So things like tobacco, burnt tea leaves, the smell of burning wood, all these kind of like tertiary, what they call tertiary note flavors, kind of like that smoky flavor, you'll find in a Tempranillo. And so it's a great wine, especially coming from Spain. It's usually not too high in terms of alcohol content, but it's good medium to kind of boldly bodied wine. Now moving on to the most popular grape that you'll find I think it's the most planted grape variety in the world. Cabernet Sauvignon. This is a really kind of like, it's a wine that usually has such strong character, really bold, full-bodied, lots of kind of tannic acidity, astringency to it, cherry notes, sour notes that are in there. It's one of the ones that are planted the most, I believe, also in the Bordeaux region in France. You'll find a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon there. And for me, it can go either way. It can either be really delicious or it can sometimes be a little too much for my personal palate. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to what people like to drink. Shiraz, or Syrah, is a grape variety that's used a lot in both France and in Australia. A lot of people like it for its savory flavors, savory notes. It usually has those flavors of preserved meats, pepper, dark berries, very kind of like fruit forward as well. And it's a nice bold wine for people who like to drink something with character. It's the type of thing that would be perfect with kind of like a steak or a creamy dish or a meaty dish. It just carries itself very well. Like a lot of people, when they think about food and wine pairing, they think about it has to complement. It doesn't always have to complement. It can also contrast, and it can actually bring something new to the table, or it can help you kind of cleanse your palate moving on to the next dish. So food and wine pairing is extremely subjective, but Syrah, yeah, so it's very popular, especially in Australia. A lot of people drink it there, and it's quite good. It's one of those that's really quite good. There's a specific Syrah which is called the Petit Syrah, which I particularly like. In Australia, they have one called de Rif, which is also quite tasty. That falls around that same grape variety. So sometimes, different countries, different grape names, same grape. Zinfandel is one of those. It started in Croatia, I believe. It's called Primitivo, which you'll find in Italy. Zinfandel is now very popular in Northern California, Napa Valley, and all those places. It's very fruit forward and spicy, and that's why people appreciate it. Finally, if you like your Italian wines, kind of like the Primitivo, you can go for something called the Sangiovese, which is very popular in Italy. It's the most planted grape in Italy. It's almost similar to a Pinot Noir in the sense that it's quite light, but you'll find flavors that are truly Italian in them, usually things like espressos, roasted tomatoes, oregano. It's quite a flavorful wine, and which is why it's so popular in Italy. So aside from all these red wines, like we said, there's 1,300 varieties of grapes that are used for both red and white wines. What you want to think about is the red blends, because a lot of the times you'll find bottles such as these. This is from South Africa, and it says dry red. So red blends are usually kind of like various grape varieties that have been produced into wine and that are then added together, or it can already be blended at the process of making the wine, which means the grapes are mixed together before actually being processed into wine. So some of them will give you information in terms of what's in the blend and some of them won't. So I really recommend when picking up a blend, just go on Google and double check online exactly what varieties go inside so that you can know whether or not that you're actually going to like it. I know that was a lot of words put together, but hopefully that helped somehow, so that next time when you walk around a wine section of a supermarket, or if you're reading a wine menu in the restaurant, you'll know what to do. See you guys.